What is up, humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing another video where we talk about an older, some would say poopier archetype in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And we're going to be talking about what it has and what it could / should get in order to be a playable, legitimately can compete, maybe not be tier 1 or anything, but able to compete in a competitive scene a little bit more frequently. That is the goal for today, because everybody has one of those archetypes, at least one of those archetypes where they're like, man, I remember that archetype from when I was a kid. I loved it when it came out, and they just never gave it enough support, or it was never good in the first place, and it always needed support, and hopefully it gets it sooner rather than later. So discussing all that stuff here. Today we're looking at Batterymen. As a kid, I loved this archetype. I mean, specifically in high school when I realized that one of my best friends had old Yu-Gi-Oh cards. We kind of put our cards together and started playing, and one of the decks that I ended up gravitating to was definitely Batterymen, even though they were not super good at that time. But still, really, really cool. One of my personal favorites. So let's get into this thing. First and foremost, we should probably start off by talking about what the deck has before we can talk about what the deck needs. So as far as what the deck has, I think you have to start off with these two cards. These are probably the two most important ones we got to throw out there. Batteryman 9-Volt and Batteryman Solar. These are both starters for the deck. This card's actually the most recent card, and I think this is like the next recent one after that. But it's funny. They've gotten support, and in the form of like two actual good starters. They just don't really have anywhere to go with them, to be honest. So very cool. 9-Volt is essentially just Stratos. On summon, he searches any Batteryman monster, and then he destroys himself on end phase. He also doubles his attack till the end of the turn, but cool. Like, he's cool. Ideally, if the deck has support, you wouldn't be ending on him anyway. And then Solar, he's an Armageddon Knight for Thunders. Just sends any Thunder on summon, and if any Thunder monster is summoned while he's on the field, he will give you a Thunder token as well, which is really cool. So both legitimate starters, and these are probably the strongest point of the deck that we have so far, is that we don't have to worry about starters. We just need more so the pieces around it. So extenders, an actual like disruption / win condition to get to, and stuff like that. A couple of the bigger monsters that are important as well: Batteryman Charger and Batteryman Fuel Cell. So Charger is more of like an engine requirement at this point, I would say, because he needs to be normal summoned to get his effect, but he'll summon a Batteryman straight out of the deck if he is. The problem is he's level 5, so you can't just normal summon. He has to be tribute summoned generally to get that effect. But it is obviously good because summoning either of these boys out will just trigger them to then get either a search or a dump, and some extension that way. So very cool. There, you also have Fuel Cell. This card's more of an extender than anything. He says if you control 2 or more Batteryman monsters, you can just jump out of the hand, and you contribute a Batteryman to bounce a card your opponent controls. So removal / an extender at the same time. He's decent. I just don't love that you have to already have had the capability of putting 2 Batteryman monsters on the field to even make him able to do anything. It would have been nicer if you only needed 1, but it is what it is. So those are both very important pieces. So I think if we got a particular support, I think this card is strong. We just need the right kind of support to abuse this card and make it really easy to tribute summon him, and like in an efficient way, ideally. So very good there. Next up here, we have the boss monster for the archetype right now. And unfortunately, this card has definitely been phased out as far as relative to other boss monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. I mean, you look at like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. It has a disruption effect that it can wipe boards by itself. And it just puts a ton of damage on board. Can definitely kill your opponent by itself. This guy just kind of pops a monster, pops a back row. But he has the same summoning condition: banish 2 Batterymen from the graveyard, and then banish a Thunder from grave to pop those 2 cards, which is fine. He's a decent extender. He's easy enough to get to. You just need 2 Batterymen in grave, but definitely not exactly what we need. If he had a disruption effect, then he'd definitely be really powerful. But I think without a disruptive effect, like he's probably just okay for now, because he's, with where Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, like, easier to get on board there. All right, then we move to a couple of spells that are interesting of note here: Batteryman Charger and Quick Charger. Battery Charger. This card's literally just Monster Reborn for a Batteryman. By paying 500 life points. Non-once per turn, really good, obviously. And it has battery in the name, which is important because obviously all the monsters have battery in the name, and a couple of the spell traps do as well, which is really cool. And then you have Quick Charger. This card's a quick effect to target 2 level 4 lower Batterymen engraved and add them back to hand. So not insane overall. Like, it is only level 2 or lower, so you can only add back like 9 volt and solar right now as far as like the good level 4 lowers. You can't add back charge, or you can't add back fuel cell, or even industrial strength, but I still think it's a +1 overall, and it does kind of set you up for like pretty strong follow-up plays. So especially if somehow this card becomes searchable, which I'm not sure. Like, it doesn't have battery in the name, but if they made a card that searches a card that has Batteryman in the card text, right? Like, they could go that route as well. So not impossible, but still worth noting in my opinion. There's also another one. There's another like regular spell that like adds 2 thunders, I think, with like 1500 or less attack or something from grave to hand. So it's like very similar. I'm not sure if it notes Batterymen specifically, but there's another one. I don't have it. I'll try and throw it up on the screen real quick there. And the last card I think that's worth noting is Portable Battery Pack. This card's pretty cool. It's Call the Haunted for Batterymen, but you can summon 2 back, and it has to be in attack position, and it has, you know, the classic Call the Haunted clause, where like if this card gets destroyed, you destroy the monsters as well. But pretty cool, because like honestly, if you were setting this and you were just able to do a play where you had 9 volt and solar engrave, even if your opponent's able to like pop this, which pops both a 9 volt and solar, summoning them just off of this, even if it does get outed, gives you a search plus a dump. So like this card's getting you just like follow up anyway, right? In the form of a search and a dump, which would honestly already be pretty dang good. So we're like definitely not going to complain at that. But obviously if we got cards that could make this a little more useful on the opponent's turn, that would also be good as well. So at the end of the day, I think we end up with a couple things that the deck really needs. First and foremost, there is 0 disruption in the entire archetype. That definitely has to change. Even if the Konami goes the route of trying to push this as a going second deck, we need to see a way that like if you don't kill, you need to be able to set up some kind of interruptions that your opponent doesn't just play right through you and just destroy you on the crackback, because that's obviously a big problem with certain going second strategies that can't make up their own disruptions. So we need some form of interruption, whether we get like a new boss monster that has a strong disruptive effect, like UCT, you know, use it in the same way, right? Break through a board, then summon UCT, and even if you don't kill, you have at least one powerful interruption for them to have to play through. Second, but I don't necessarily see that being the case. We have cards like Quick Charger and Portable Battery Pack, which really makes me think they would almost want to lean towards more of like a grindy deck. That, you know, because you're getting 2 monsters back, you're getting 2 monsters back, right? That's all about rotating resources, continuing to play turn after turn, right? Secondly, the deck needs better extenders. As far as extenders, like Charger is good. Battery Charger is great as a monster reborn. And then you just have Fuel Cell and Industrial Strength. Fuel Cell's okay, but you already need to put 2 monsters on the field aside from him just to even make him live in the first place. So that's definitely a big thing, whether they want to make a monster that's kind of like the Butter Spy card, where it's just like maybe if a Batteryman is summoned, it can jump out of the hand. That way you could potentially chain block 9 volt, chain block Charger, chain block Solar. That would all be very useful, of course. Or they could make it just, I guess, just a trigger effect, or not trigger effect, just a, oh my God, I'm blanking on the term, but whatever, just an ignition effect, where if you just control a Batteryman as the condition, it can just jump out of the hand. Instead of needing 2, it would just be a little easier, and also just having more names for good extenders would obviously be good. I think links probably make the most sense. Your deck doesn't share enough levels for Exceeds to make sense. The deck has no tuners, so synchros don't really make sense. And so, like, I guess they could look at Fusion, but I don't know. Fusion is fine, I guess, but I think Link would make the most sense. So if they gave them a series of links, that would make it really easy payoff, because the deck is able, the deck has the beginning tools of being able to spam into bodies. So that may be a route they want to go. So yeah, right now we're looking at extenders, some kind of interruption that could be also in the form of a link. I know I talked about a new like main deck boss monster, but if they want to just put in the extra, that would be absolutely fine, as long as it's a fairly easy to summon link monster. And I would also say consistency. One card that really jumped out at me that as soon as I saw it, I was like, or that as soon as I thought about it, I was like, that card would be so good in Batterymen. And the card I'm thinking of here is the new continuous spell for Cyber Darks. And if just to break the card down very simply, it just says like 1 on activation, add a Cyberdark monster from deck to hand, and 2, once per turn while it's face up, you can just gain an additional normal summon for a Cyberdark monster. But obviously do that, except search a Batteryman, additional normal for a Batteryman. And the key thing that that card would do is it allows Charger to be much better in the deck. So even just ideally, if all you had in the hand was that spell, you would go activate the spell, right? That spell searches 9-volt, then you can normal 9-volt, then 9-volt effect activates, searching Charger, and then you can use the new normal summon to tribute the 9-volt, summoning the Charger, and then the Charger would trigger summoning the Solar. Solar would then trigger getting a dump, which would also be important, like maybe a series of monsters, 1 or 2 monsters that give you like actual good value in graveyard, because Solar is better in like Dragon and Thunder Dragons than it is Batteryman. There's really not much payoff for dumping a Batteryman monster, so maybe give us an in-archetype Batteryman monster that's actually good to be sent to grave. Maybe it just summons itself back if it's in grave while you control a Batteryman or something, or I don't know, whatever. Just something that gives you value there. And then if we have a Link 2, we already have the materials for a Link 2 to kind of like continue to play. I keep referencing like the Ancient Warriors Link, the Link 2. It's like insane, and if this deck got something like that, it'd be Disruption, it'd search you another resource, and all that stuff. Like, that's just a modern day Link monster that obviously can be applied to like a lot of decks that need help, like a monster that powerful, that if you get into it, you get like immediate payoff. But just there, that's if you just opened the spell and nothing else, no other extenders, which is really solid. And it like even more so if you opened like both of these, or actually like one of these and the spell, you just get to like do even more, which is really good. So just a lot going on there, obviously. So I think a card like that would be one, already great to increase consistency in finding your starters like 9-volt and Solar, but also a card that built into it has an additional normal effect that makes Charger actually playable in the deck as like a combo piece slash like extender card. Would be really awesome. So just some things I'm thinking about. So yeah, in general, like maybe a search card for a little bit of consistency slash utility, extenders in the deck that are better, some monsters that give you better value in graveyard, and maybe a couple links that just actually give you like payoff, you know? So like just disruption in some form. And maybe you could get a new trap that has battery in the name, and as long as we have a card that gets us access to battery spells and traps, then like that works as well. But yeah, and also just don't forget the fact that like that Thunder Dragons are a legit Thunder archetype, and they always could combine with this. If Colossus comes off the ban list and this deck were to get support, maybe there was some way to combine them both to be like just disgusting. But who knows, right? Like the sky's the limit as far as Thunder Dragon. Like we've seen them combine with other stuff that we weren't necessarily ready at the time, but like Solar was just played in that deck pretty regularly. So, you know, that's as meta as Batterymen have ever been, is Solar being teched into Thunder Dragons. But it's a very cool archetype. There's so many ways, and I always say this, like Konami can get to the end goal of like making Batterymen a better archetype by doing so many different things in different ways. But I'd love to hear in the comment section your thoughts here. How would you like to see Konami go about making new cards for here? What route would you like them to take as far as giving Batterymen like a wave of support? I think they need a decently large wave. I don't think this is one of those decks that's like 1 or 2 cards off. It's probably more like 5 to 7 cards off, as long as they were all solid. They don't have to be busted or anything. They just all need to be pretty good, and I think the deck would be able to actually do some cool stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna end it off there. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know your thoughts on that down below. I love this deck so much. Aesthetically, it's so cool. They're cute slash cool at the same time. I am all about it. But thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, more discussions about older archetypes that need help down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.